since you are picking up Miss Spice before we get together for a lesson together, I'm assuming because she's getting some haircuts or a bath or something, I wanted to just send a quick little video over just for you to have until we can kind of go over everything in more detail. So first things first, I kind of wanted to go over some of the tools I've been using. So one thing I've been using with her is a prong collar. It is the world's tiniest little thing. And I know when you see this, you're probably like, why does this 2-ounce little dog need this? The reason that I chose to use a prong is not so much for control, because obviously she's pretty easy to control. She doesn't weigh anything. It's more so because of the pressure that she was putting on her neck from a slip lead and things like that, in order to teach her how to move into pressure, to turn the pressure off from the leash, the tension off. It was just hard to communicate that, because there's only so much pressure you can apply before she's either hurting herself, or because she's so tiny and fragile, or before I literally am lifting her off the ground. So it was just like a very complicated thing and very unclear for her, trying to balance, applying an appropriate amount of pressure. So the prong really helped with that. So I'm able to apply such tiny little amount of pressure, and she responds to it right away. So for me, that was something that was so much clearer for her, and I was able to communicate right away. She responded right away, and I didn't need to put any type of pressure on her, really. I could just ever so slightly lift up on the leash and communicate with her what I wanted her to do, where I wanted her to move, what I wanted her to stop doing, things like that. So for me, this was a no-brainer. I wanted to use this. And so the way that we take this on and off is we want to, I've just tangled it. We want to take it apart. Let me put it together so I can show you that. We want to take it apart by pushing up on one of these tines and squeezing our thumb on that little horseshoe part right there. So the opposite prong, we're going to push up on the prong part, the little tine, and then squeeze those two little parts that come up like this. Squeeze them, well, bam, like that. So then when you put it around her neck, you want to make sure that this chain part is not tangled, and then you wrap it around, matching up those two tines to those holes, just like that, the matching parts. Rita, stop scratching, please, it's annoying. It's my dog's right there. When we attach the leash, sorry, I'm trying to stay in the frame, there's 2 O-rings right here. We're going to use the one that, if you hold the collar part out, the one that's on top, that's the one where we're going to attach the leash. And then the other O-ring is going to be the one that rests on the neck. So the way that this works is when you apply pressure, it causes the collar to close all the way around her neck uniformly. So it's not just putting pressure just on one part of her neck, like a normal flat collar, or like the slip lead that I was originally using. Well, that uses uniform pressure also, but it's just putting pressure around her whole neck and not just that one part, which was kind of causing her to choke a little bit. And I don't know if you use a harness on her. I never see her when she comes in or picks up, so with the way things are now, I don't really ever get to see what dogs wear outside of school. She's always naked here. So I don't mind harnesses. I just think that they're, again, a little bit conflicting, just like with the regular collar. The way that the pressure works, it's kind of inconsistent. There has to be, she could deal with a lot more. It's just an annoyance, and the communication time just isn't quite there. So like if she's dragging into her harness, she can deal with a pretty good amount of that before she's like, oh, I need to respond to this. So again, I just think that with this, it's a little bit of a discomfort. That's the way that it works. I'm not going to say that this doesn't bother her, but it's not the same thing as pain. It's just discomfort enough to where she's like, I need to respond to this information. So you can apply so much less pressure, and that is going to be the caveat, is we do want to be very, very, very mindful of the amount of pressure that we're applying so that it's not too much for her. And I don't really like to paint little dogs as not being able to handle a lot, because I think that's why they get away with a lot, is because they're little, they can't handle a lot. Spicy's pretty resilient, but she is really tiny. She's a very, very, very toy breed, so I do want to be careful with those things. As far as off leash goes, normally I do, I'm gonna stand back up. Normally I do e-collar training, and I did start with an e-collar with her, but I made an executive decision to discontinue that for just a little while because I wasn't really liking the way that it fit her. I got her a special one that is for toy breeds, but it just doesn't sit on her neck the right way. We played around with it a little bit, and I wasn't really seeing the response that I wanted. So again, that's what I usually use to train for off leash. So if that's something when she gets a little bit bigger that you want to come back and join up and we can do lessons together, you don't have to pay anything extra, we can finish up with that. I'm totally happy to do that. I just think for right now, she's not the right size for that. So since that is the case, what I've been doing is keeping her on a long line. So when we go out places, I take her to a bunch of different places. I'm just working on creating motivation for her so that she wants to come back to me. So using her meals instead of just putting a bowl down and letting her eat out of them, varying the amount of food that I give her, the type of food that I give her, when I give it to her. I want her to not be able to really predict what I have to offer so that she doesn't have the ability to decide between motivators. So if she always gets a dog cookie, whatever, when you call her to you, if she's doing something out in the yard or she sees something that she's interested in, she can choose between if she likes doing that more or if she likes what you have to offer. She can choose because she always knows. So if she has no idea what it is, and sometimes it's something really good, sometimes it's nothing at all, sometimes it's a meal, sometimes it's a couple kibbles or whatever, that uncertainty is going to be a motivation for her to want to come and check out what you have. And then we have, at least for right now, we have the long line, a really, really long leash, to have as backup in case she decides that she doesn't care what we have to offer. And that's always a possibility. They're dogs, sometimes they're a squirrel or a cat or whatever. Sometimes they don't care even slightly what you have to offer. That is more motivating ultimately. That is normally where the e-collar comes in to say, hey, like, I need you to come back to me no matter what you decide is more motivating. But again, we're not using that, so the long line is there to create that success rate. I want her to understand that every time I call her to me, she has to come back to me. Sometimes there's really great things, sometimes it's mediocre things, sometimes it's nothing at all, but she has to come back to me. The more success that you have, the more the ability to blow us off and ignore us, that becomes extinct because it's never successful. So honestly, that is going to be my biggest takeaway for obtaining off-leash reliability, where even if she's doesn't have to be outside, if she's outside, if she's inside, she's just around the house and you call her name, we want to always get her to come back to us so that we have that success rate. A trick to that, if you don't want her to wear a long line in the house, that's completely normal. I don't want my dogs wearing long lines in the house. That's very annoying. There's straps everywhere. And then there's a possibility of chewing. Also, I want to real quick point over at Miss Spicy. I worked very hard to get this dog to like a crate. She went in there on her own. Good girl. Anyway, the trick to getting them to come back is I don't say so-and-so come. I don't want to say that the C-O-M-E word and have there be a possibility that they don't listen. So what I like to do is I'll just kind of sing their name. So it's Spicy. I don't want to say her now because I just think she's cute. If they, and this isn't a situation obviously where like it really doesn't matter, like she's just in the house. This is a practice scenario. We're going to sing her name, make it something that she's going to want to come see what we have to offer, but you're not using that command. We're just saying her name. If she shows interest, then you can be like, hey girl, and be silly, be motivating, be something that she wants to come see what you have. maybe like to come get play or cuddles or whatever. And when she is in the act of coming over to you, she's like, oh, you said my name, you rang, and she starts walking over, then you can say, come, and then so you're pairing that command to the act of what she's already doing. So she already knows what those words mean, but it's just kind of strengthening that command to the behavior, syncing them together. If you say her name and she doesn't acknowledge you at all, and you need her to come over to you, that's going to be a situation where I would just get up and go over to her and then kind of run back. So, oh, hello, welcome. So, like if I say her name and she just keeps sitting on the ground, I'm going to walk over to her and then say her name again and kind of run backwards. So, where are you? Spicy! Yeah, come, good job, good girl. Spice, come, yeah, good girl. Good job. So, just a little trick. The secret sauce to dog training is always following through and creating that success. So if we ask her to do something, we want to make sure that we're following through with that request. And I think that's something, again, with little dogs, that's something that I think a lot of people, they're kind of sweep under the carpet, because with the exception of accidents in the house and barking, like most people can deal with little things that little dogs do. Whereas if she is a large dog and she was jumping or pulling or whatever, it's definitely much more on your radar. So I really want it to be a thing where we follow through with what we ask her to do. So if we ask her to sit, we want to make sure she goes into a sit. If we ask her to go into a down, we want to make sure she goes into a down. If we have her on her place command and so forth, we want to make sure that we keep her doing those things. And if she comes out of behavior before we say so, then we just put her back in behavior. And if it's something where it's a time constraint and you're like, I don't have time to mess with this, get her to do it for 1 second, let her come out of it, release her on your terms so that you are winning. Things don't have to happen for really long periods of time. We just want to make sure that there is success in that. If she starts to shut down because she's getting frustrated, maybe you're getting frustrated, give her something really easy to do, build up her spirits when she's successful, and then go back to asking for the thing that she thought was a little bit tricky. So I'm gonna go ahead and suit her up and just run her through her obedience real quick. And I'm sure I'll think of something else to talk about. Whenever when COVID first started, I did primarily just these videos to send home to people, and I really hated it because I don't have that, that interactiveness of like questions during it. So I kind of just start to ramble and I lose track of what I'm talking about. So, which I'm already starting to do. So, oops, sorry. I would like to get together so that we can go over things and you can ask questions and you can work with her around me and you can be like, hey, this is something we're still experiencing, all that good jazz. All right. Are you ready? I'm kind of blind, so I can only see a little bit of her on my phone screen, and she's like this little dot sitting in front of me. Hi! I gave her a bath last night. I'm sure she's getting ready to leave here to go do a grooming. I think that's what you said you do with her on Fridays. But I gave her one last night because she decided that it would be fun to roll and poop. So regardless of what she gets today, I didn't want her to send her home in with some schmears on her. All right, so with her obedience, when we give the commands, we want it to only be given once. So if I tell her sit, I'm going to say sit one time. I'm not going to say sit, 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 Spice, sit. I want her to just do it. If she doesn't want to, or she struggles, or she's distracted, or whatever, that's when we give some form of pressure to help her be successful. So backing up a little bit with our markers, we have good, we have the word yes, and we have okay, and then the word no. Good means I like what you did, continue to do it. If I'm paying her, if I'm reinforcing her with food, I'm going to bring the food to her so that she stays in behavior. And I use that just to kind of check in periodically to make sure that she's finding value and remaining there, just to remind her that I need her to stay in behavior. So if something interesting comes around, I'll say good sit, just to kind of help her remember that she's doing something if the little squirrel brain kicks in. Yes is going to be something where I'm marking a specific moment in time that I like something, it means that nothing past that word yes has to continue, so she doesn't have to stay in behavior. That means that I want her to come to me to get reinforcement. So I really use that one a lot if I'm trying to build enthusiasm in something. Specifically, if we're out on a walk and she sees another dog or person's giving her attention, because that's what they all do because she's so cute. They're like, oh my god, you're so cute. And she's like, oh, I know, and she wants to go over. What I like to do is when she sees them and they start doing all their hoo-ha stuff, I will say the word yes, so that she comes back, turns back to me, and gets a payment from me. So I just ignore them, honestly. They become neutral. The good stuff happens for me as her handler. So I want her to be paying attention to me. And then I'll get in a little bit to like corrections and things like that. So yeah, that's a situation where I would use the word yes. If she's struggling with something, I'll use it to kind of build her up. It's just something where I could do like I put her into behavior and then I reward her quickly. That speed builds enthusiasm in it. So I'll tell her to sit, yes, good, sit, repeating it a bunch of times. That speed and that continuing it to do it makes it really exciting for them. You can jackpot and give her a couple of treats and things like that. Okay is going to be you're done with your behavior. It's more of a neutral release. So if I tell her to sit or she's in a down right now, I could say okay, and that means she can come out of behavior, but I'm not necessarily going to give her anything. It just means that we're done with the behavior. The word no is going to be used to interrupt breaking out of behavior, or just to interrupt her doing something that you don't like. Or if you ask her to go to a behavior and she doesn't feel like it, we can say no, and then again apply the pressure. So going back to pressure, when we apply pressure, that is when we are asking her to do something or stopping her from doing something that we don't want. We remove that pressure when we have the behavior that we want. So we have leash pressure, which is going to be tension in the leash. We have, we normally would have e-collar pressure, but we're not using that, so I'll skip over that part. And then we have spatial pressure. So spatial pressure is going to be using our space to ask for space from her. So if she's crowding my space, say going in and out of doorways, I will turn into her and kind of move into her with my front facing her, so that she moves back. So again, as soon as she gives me the space that I'm asking for, I discontinue applying that spatial pressure. So again, if I want her to move back, as soon as she got up and gave me a little space, I stopped moving into her. If I wanted more, I would keep asking for that space. I would just keep asking for it until I had the amount that I wanted. Good girl. With the leash pressure, that's typically going to be applied in the direction that we want to manipulate her into. So if I want her to go into a sit, which she's in a down now, if I want her to go into a sit from a stand, when she sits, her head comes up like that, so we would apply pressure upwards. If I want her to go into a down, I'm applying pressure kind of down and out. If we're walking and I have her by my side and she starts to forge ahead, I'm going to apply a little bit of pressure back and up, just to kind of help fix her positioning. So when we're walking, I want her on my, your thing is broken, or not broken, step. I want her on my left side like this. I'm going to keep my leash short and loose, so that way when she's where I want her to be, sit, good. There's a lot of slack in the leash, which doesn't always look like that with her because she's so far down below me. But there's no tension. If she starts to get ahead, I'm just going to apply a little bit of pressure back and up like that. Same thing if she starts to show interest in something on the ground. I know you're saying that she likes to grab leaves and things like that. If she starts to do that, I'll just say out, and I kind of do a little pop and release up. And again, it's the slightest little baby amount of pressure. Anything more, and she's very responsive to that, so we don't want to cause any squeaks or anything like that. So let's go. If she starts to forge ahead, let's see if I can get her. Delete my camera falls. Let's go. Good. Let's go. She's like, what? I didn't do anything wrong. Come on. Sit. Good. Down. A little bit of pressure. Down. Good girl. Yes. Yeah. Good girl. Let's go. So for good. Leash reactivity. I'm going to use that term very loosely with her. This little girl is not aggressive, even slightly. But reactivity, I just mean responding to elements things happening around us. So usually that's dogs, not as much, but definitely people, because she's so used to people oohing and eyeing over her because she's adorable. So what I like to do is, again, if it's something where she's just like, hey, I see a person, and she's like wags her tail and she's excited, as long as she's staying in position, like next to me, and she's not moving to go like completely disengaging from me and going to say hi to them, I'm going to give that yes marker and reward her for staying in position and kind of build excitement and finding value in me, even though that's something that's very just organically rewarding for her. If it's something where she starts to fixate, so that means like her ears perk forward, she gets a little stiff and she starts turning towards them, I'm just going to give her a very light NO with a pop of the leash. I'm not going to do it now because she's laying down. So just a very slight, nope, little correction, like with just your 2 fingers, that's all she needs. Let's go to remind her that she's in behavior, so let's go is the command used for walking. And then good when she fixes her positioning and starts walking with you again. I haven't really found that she needed anything more than that. Again, all of her reactivity is just stems from her being over social. She wants to go say hi. She's already found so much value in that. My recommendation for Spice, because that is something that very quickly manifests into something a little more serious when every single person they see on the street or dog, because we know Spice is social, we allow her to meet and greet with them, then there becomes that element of frustration when she wants to go do it on her terms, and maybe it's not your idea that you want to do, and the restraint from the leash causes that frustration, and the barking happens, and maybe like I've seen it so many times. It's such a common thing for especially dogs here, where they're allowed to play with other dogs all day, and then when they go out with their parents on walks, they're like, I want to go do that, but I can't. So that a super social dog off leash just becomes something that's crazy on leash, and I don't want that to happen for Spice because she's already so friendly. My recommendation, which I was getting to, is I save social greetings for people that matter. So people that you're going to continue to see in life, close friends, close neighbors, family members, things like that. If it's just someone that lives in your neighborhood but you don't really talk to them, if you're out and about with her, whatever, and they're like, oh my gosh, she's so cute, just say thank you and keep moving on. That's what I do. Every time I take her somewhere, everyone is like, oh my gosh, she's so cute. I'm like, thanks, and just keep walking. I'm definitely very callous to that now because I take so many dogs places that I don't care anymore what people think about me. So I know that's a little bit harder for people. This is your dog and you want to not be a jerk and be like, no, you can't pet my dog. So for me, I just very, very politely say, oh, thanks, and I just keep walking, and I don't really give that like lull of, can I pet them, or whatever. And if you want to let people pet your dog, that's fine, it's your dog, but I do like to caveat to that to make sure you understand, like, she's your dog to enjoy, nobody else's, and we want to set her up for success. And I have seen dogs exactly like Spice is right now, very friendly, become little terrorists as they get older because they do find so much value, and people and dogs are not. So, just my 2 cents. Her place command, let me make sure this is still recording because that would be no good. Yes, it is, okay. Her place command. Obviously, it does not need to be this large. Can I put it down? It just needs to be something that she can, that she can distinguish what her boundaries are. So these are what I have, so this is what we use here, but if you don't have one of these, totally fine. She doesn't need something that's 18 times the size of her. Just a dog bed, a blanket, a mat, a towel. I really like to use the place a lot. When I first started training, I thought it was something that was a little bit silly. But I found that it has so many values. So teaching impulse control. So when she's on her place, Spicy place, she's not allowed to come off of it regardless of what's happening around her. So if I drop food, Spice, good place. If I drop food, nope, good. If I go from sitting down, standing up, walking over, messing with another dog, opening doors, all of that stuff. Good girl. I want her to be able to remain on here. So in this context, she's learning that she can't respond to everything happening around her, so it's gonna help her with her impulses in other situations where the distractions are a bit different. So I always recommend starting out small at home. Done her place with her, and she's so mad she can't have those hot dogs. Are you being a little bull? It's mine. Starting out with small expectations at home here. What was I saying? Oh, so like I've taken her as many places as possible. Obviously, I've never worked with her at your house, so that's going to be a new thing for her. Some dogs are really great at generalizing that this picture everywhere. Some need to have that broken down a little bit in home environments and places. Nope. What are you doing? Why are you yelling at me? No. Good girl. So I recommend, we're not expecting her to be on her place for 2 hours at home. Starting out just a couple seconds maybe. You hanging around and rewarding her regularly at first, and then again varying that amount that time. We don't want her to expect reinforcement at every single point in time or whatever. What are you? I don't understand what this is. No, thank you, good girl. So do things like going and sitting down on your chair and standing back up and coming and giving her reinforcement. That might not seem like a big deal to us, that's weird, but for her, who's maybe used to, if you go sit down, she comes and she jumps up into your lap, that may be a picture that she knows and she's used to, so she just reverts back to it, and she's willing to break this command over. So if it's something that you go sit down and she's like, oh, come over, start with a smaller step. So you're gonna put her on her place, walk over to the chair and touch it. Good, come back and pay her. And then go the next time, half sit, stay back up and come pay her. These are things that I do all day long. Squatting is my thing. I'm just always going, food. So that's very helpful for her to understand that picture of remaining on her place is a big deal at home too. So work your way up to the bigger picture. Nope, there's nothing on there, I took them all. So we have place, we have the impulse control aspect, we have spatial independence. So when I first started working with her, even though she does pretty good in the kennel room next door with all the other dogs, place. When she's in this room and in a kennel, that's when she gets very, very vocal. So maybe a little bit of separation anxiety, maybe more so just FOMO, where she's like doesn't want to miss out on anything. Maybe she doesn't like being alone. So I wanted to get her used to the kennel, inside the kennel, place, good girl, but also get her used to being on I always call it an anchor, like a stationary object or place, as I move around her and reinforce her for remaining on her. So she's finding value and staying in one area where she's not so locked in. She's much more aware of having to be on here, whereas the crate, she's just forced to be in there. So she has to be, again, aware of the fact that she has to stay on this place, and that's how she finds value. Otherwise, there is punishment, not punishment like how humans perceive it, but punishment as a training term. Nope. Spice. Miss Thing. Thank you. Good girl. So yeah, spatial independence, impulse control, and just giving her a transition between, maybe she was really excited and you're playing and being silly with her, and then you want her to come inside and be calm. Sometimes dogs aren't really great at navigating between those two different things. So this is more of a mental simulation of, we were just all outside playing, excited, being crazy, come down here into your place, mentally simulating to have to remain on here, and she's having to think about what she's doing, and then you can release her and let her have free reign around the house, because now she's settled down a little bit and had that opportunity to calm down and become less aroused than when she was outside and playing and being silly. Again, I feel like I'm probably forgetting something. I would like to get together to go over things in more details, probably forget something, or probably remember something that we need to talk. I'm sure you'll have questions. Again, with the recall, long line, big thing. Where mine is. I had one in here that I was using on her. We use Spicy. Good girl. So I don't say that CO in me until she's already engaging with me. I want to keep up that success. I don't want it to be Spice, come, good girl, and then she doesn't listen when she in here. She always listens. Outside I really haven't had any problems with her. She always comes when I call her. But I don't know. I've really worked hard for that relationship with her. Not saying that you haven't, but she's training. When we're doing stuff together, we're doing things together. So, all right. If you have any questions, please let me know. Ready?